The screen of her laptop glowed like a cold moon in the dim kitchen, casting long shadows across the worn wooden table. Emily Harper sat alone, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the messages that had flooded her inbox over the past week. They started innocently enough, anonymous tips from a neighborhood watch group, but had twisted into something darker, laced with threats that made her stomach churn. You think you can hide forever? We'll find you. Your little good deeds won't save you. The words blurred as her eyes welled up, the cursor hovering over the delete button like a lifeline she couldn't grasp. At 42, widowed for 3 years after her husband's sudden heart attack left her raising their teenage daughter alone, Emily had poured her energy into small acts of kindness in their quiet suburban town. But now those acts felt like a curse. The threats had escalated tonight, mentioning her daughter's school, the route she took to work at the local diner. Fear coiled in her chest, tight as the locket around her neck, a silver promise from her late husband engraved with "Forever ours." She slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the empty house like a gunshot. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the windows, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. Emily paced the linoleum floor, her bare feet cold against the chill that seeped from the cracks. She hadn't told anyone, not her daughter, Sophie, who was asleep upstairs, dreaming of college applications, nor her few friends who drifted away after the funeral. Who would believe her? A single mom, barely scraping by, targeted by faceless strangers online. It must be connected to that rainy night 6 months ago when she'd pulled over on the highway to help a group of stranded motorcyclists. Their bikes had broken down in a storm, engines sputtering like wounded animals, and she'd offered her old pickup truck to tow them to the nearest garage. No questions asked, just a warm blanket from her back seat and directions to a mechanic she trusted. They'd called themselves the Iron Vow Riders, a tight-knit crew of veterans and blue-collar wanderers, led by a grizzled man named Marcus Hale. He'd thanked her with a firm handshake and a nod that spoke of debts unspoken. "You've got our word, ma'am, if you ever need anything." But life had moved on, or so she'd thought. A low rumble pierced the night, growing from a distant hum to a thunderous roar that vibrated through the walls. Emily froze, her heart pounding as headlights pierced the curtains, dozens of them, slicing through the darkness like searchlights. She crept to the window, peering out with bated breath. There, in the driveway and spilling onto the street, was a convoy of motorcycles, their chrome frames gleaming under the sodium glow of the street lamps. 50 strong, at least, engines idling with a predatory growl, riders in leather vests emblazoned with a coiled serpent and the words "Iron Vow." Marcus Hale dismounted first, his boots crunching on the gravel as he approached the porch. The others fanned out, forming a silent perimeter around the house, some leaning on their bikes, others scanning the shadows with eyes hardened by roads less traveled. Emily's hand flew to her mouth as she opened the door a crack, the cool air rushing in with the smell of exhaust and oiled leather. "Marcus, what? What is this?" Her voice was a whisper, laced with confusion and a spark of hope she dared not name. He removed his helmet, revealing salt and pepper hair and a face etched with the lines of old battles, both on distant sands and forgotten highways. "Heard you might need some company, Emily. Word travels fast in our circles. Those messages, we traced them back to some lowlife stirring trouble online, and thought we'd make sure they think twice." His tone was steady, like the rumble of a well-tuned engine, carrying the weight of a vow renewed. Behind him the riders nodded in unison, a brotherhood forged in fire and fidelity. One, a burly man named Tyler with a tattoo of a fallen comrade's dog tags on his forearm, revved his engine softly, a signal of readiness. Emily's mind raced back to that stormy night, the way they'd shared stories around her kitchen table while waiting for the tow, laughing about lost causes and promises kept. She dismissed it as a fleeting kindness, But now, as the convoy encircled her home like guardians from a bygone era, she realized the depth of their code. These weren't outlaws. They were men who'd lost too much to wars and regrets, binding themselves to a creed of loyalty that outlasted blood. As the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're not leaving till this blows over. You helped us when the world turned its back. Now, it's our turn to stand watch." And the words hung in the air, heavy with the promise of redemption for all of them. Emily felt the knot in her chest loosen, just a fraction, as the bikers settled in, their presence a shield against the encroaching shadows. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The threats weren't random. They tied back to something bigger, a web of corruption that had ensnared her late husband's old construction firm, where whispers of bribes and cover-ups had lingered after his death. Sophie stirred upstairs, unaware. But Emily sensed the storm gathering. With these unlikely allies, she might just weather it. The morning light filtered through the trees, catching the dew on the motorcycles like diamonds on steel. Tyler handed Emily a thermos of strong coffee, black as midnight, his gruff voice cutting the quiet. "Ain't much, but it'll keep you sharp. We've got eyes on the block, day and night." She nodded, sipping the warmth that chased away the night's chill, her gaze sweeping the vigilant circle. Marcus leaned against his bike, phone in hand, coordinating with contacts from his veteran network. "Got a buddy in tech who's digging deeper into those accounts. Names'll surface soon enough." As the town awoke to the unusual sight, curtains twitching, neighbors whispering, Emily stepped back inside, the door clicking shut with a sense of fortified resolve. Sophie bounded down the stairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes, freezing at the window. "Mom, are those bikers?" Emily pulled her into a hug, the locket pressing against her chest. "Friends, honey, the kind who keep promises." Hours ticked by under the watchful eyes of the Iron Vow. A suspicious van idled at the corner, its driver glancing nervously before peeling away under the biker's unyielding stares. Marcus radioed the details, his voice calm amid the static. "Tag it and tail it. No moves till we know more." The air hummed with purpose, the scent of gasoline mingling with fresh-baked bread from Emily's oven, a small act of normalcy in the brewing tempest. By midday, the first real lead emerged. An encrypted email trail pointing to a local developer, Victor Lang, who'd been pressuring widows like Emily to sell their properties cheap for a shady mall project. Her husband's firm had resisted him years ago, and now, with her as the last holdout, the online harassment was his crude weapon. Marcus's jaw tightened, memories of betrayed oaths flashing in his eyes. This ain't just about land, it's about honoring the fallen. The riders murmured agreement, engines firing up for a reconnaissance run, leaving a skeleton crew to guard the home. Emily watched them go, the convoy disappearing into the haze, a trail of dust marking their path. For the first time in months, fear gave way to fire, a quiet determination to uncover the truth, backed by men who'd chosen family over solitude. The day stretched on, tension building like thunderheads, but in the heart of it all, a promise endured, loyalty, unyielding as the road. The afternoon sun hung low over the suburban sprawl, casting elongated shadows that danced like wary sentinels across Emily's front yard. The Iron Vow riders had split their forces with military precision, half the convoy thundering off toward the industrial outskirts, where Victor Lang's development office squatted like a bloated toad amid chain-link fences and half-dug foundations. Marcus Hale led that charge, his Harley roaring defiance as they cut through traffic, the wind whipping their vests like flags of forgotten wars. Back at the house, the remaining riders formed an unbreakable ring. Tyler on the porch, nursing a cigarette that curled smoke into the crisp air, his eyes never straying from the street. Beside him, a younger rider named Noah, lean and sharp-eyed, with a scar tracing his jaw from some long-ago skirmish, scanned the neighborhood on a battered tablet, cross-referencing license plates with a network of old military contacts. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed against the chill that lingered despite the sun's warmth. Sophie hovered nearby, her school backpack slung over one shoulder, curiosity battling caution in her wide blue eyes. "Mum, this is crazy. Who are these guys, really? They look like they stepped out of one of those old action movies you watch." Emily forced a smile, the locket at her throat a steady weight, reminding her of anchors in stormy seas. "They're good people, Soph. The kind who remember what it means to help without asking for anything back." She glanced at Tyler, who caught her eye and nodded. The gesture simple, yet loaded with the gravity of oaths sworn in foxholes and rain-slicked roads. Inside, the kitchen felt smaller now, fortified by the low murmur of voices filtering through the screen door. Riders trading stories in clipped tones, the clink of tools as they checked their bikes. Emily brewed another pot of coffee, the rich aroma grounding her as she replayed the morning's revelations. Victor Lang. The name had surfaced like a ghost from her husband's files, tucked away in a dusty box in the attic. Daniel Harper had been the honest heart of that construction crew, turning down Lang's shady deals even when it cost them contracts and friends. Integrity over easy money, he'd say, his calloused hand squeezing hers during late-night talks. After his death, the firm crumbled under pressure, but Emily had held onto their modest home, the last piece of their dream, overlooking a quiet park where Sophie used to chase fireflies. Now, Lang's online puppets were closing in, their threats a digital noose tightening around her resolve. A sharp crackle from Noah's radio shattered the relative calm. "Boss, we've got eyes on the target. Lang's office. Looks like a meeting with some suits. Suited types, not the road kind." Marcus's voice cut through, gravelly and unyielding. "Hold position. No engagement yet. We're circling the block. Emily, you got any old docs from Daniel's work? Anything tying Lang to the firm?" She rummaged through the attic stairs, dust motes swirling in the slanted light like whispers of the past. There, in a faded folder labeled Harper Builds, were invoices yellowed with age, notes scrawled in Daniel's precise hand. "Lang offer rejected. Bribes implied. Watch your back." Her fingers trembled as she snapped photos on her phone, the flash a brief burst of truth in the gloom. By dusk, the reconnaissance team returned, engines growling to a halt in a symphony of restrained power. Marcus dismounted, his face a mask of controlled fury, lines deepening like cracks in parched earth. He gathered the core group on the lawn, Emily included, Sophie peeking from the window as the sky bruised purple overhead. The air carried the tang of cooling metal and distant barbecue from neighbors too intrigued to stay indoors. "Lang's not just pushing sales," Marcus said, voice low, pulling up a grainy photo on his phone. A nondescript building with tinted windows, men in ill-fitting suits unloading crates under cover of twilight. "He's got ties to a crew that's been shaking down folks like you for years. Your husband's stand. It left a mark. These threats are payback, meant to scare you off the property. But we dug deeper, found chatter about forged docs, making it look like the land's cursed or something to drop the value." Tyler's fist clenched, the dog tag's tattoo flexing like a living memory. "Seen this before. Back in the sandbox, officers cutting corners, leaving brothers exposed. We don't let it slide here." Noah nodded, his tablet glowing with red-flagged emails, traced one of the harassers to a dummy account linked to Lang's assistant. "Sloppy work. We rattle that cage. The whole nest spills." Emily's breath caught, the weight of it all pressing down, the corruption that had stolen her husband's peace even before his heart gave out. Yet here, amid the chrome and leather, she felt a spark of the justice Daniel had died believing in. These men, scarred by their own losses, Marcus, with eyes haunted by desert nights, Tyler by a buddy's empty bunk, had chosen this vigil not for glory, but for the quiet honor of standing for the overlooked. As night fully claimed the street, the riders shifted into watches, their silhouettes blending with the oaks like ancient guardians. Emily sat on the porch steps with Marcus, the glow of a lantern casting flickering shadows on his weathered features. "Why us?" she asked softly, the question hanging between them like exhaust in still air. He stared into the dark, the distant hum of a car engine fading under their scrutiny. "You pulled us from the rain. No judgment. Shared your table, your time. In our world, that's a bond. Iron vow ain't just a patch, it's a promise. We lost too many to broken words. Your husband sounds like he got it right. We're just making sure his echo don't fade." Sophie emerged then, blanket draped over her shoulders, offering mugs of hot cocoa that steamed in the cool air. The riders accepted with grunts of thanks, the simple gesture weaving her into their circle, a chosen daughter in this makeshift family. Laughter broke the tension briefly, tales of road mishaps lightening the load, but beneath it pulsed the growing storm. A text buzzed on Marcus's phone. Another threat, this one bolder, mentioning Sophie's name. The group stilled, resolve hardening like steel in a forge. Emily rose, determination etching her face as she met Marcus's gaze. "Tomorrow, we push back. For Daniel. For all of us." The riders revved in agreement, a low chorus that vibrated through the ground, promising not vengeance, but the unyielding truth that loyalty could outride any shadow. As stars pricked the velvet sky, the house stood taller, wrapped in the unbreakable vow of those who'd chosen to ride for the light. But in the distance, headlights flickered, uninvited eyes watching, the web tightening. The real test loomed, a moral crossroads where promises would be forged or fractured in the fire of the coming dawn. The first light of dawn crept over the rooftops, like a hesitant scout, gilding the edges of the Iron Vow riders' motorcycles parked sentinel around Emily's home. The air was crisp, laced with the earthy scent of dew-kissed grass and the faint metallic tang of exhaust from the night's watchful idling. Marcus Hale stood at the edge of the driveway, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the paling sky, nursing a mug of coffee that steamed like a whispered secret. He'd barely slept, his mind replaying the encrypted messages his tech-savvy contact had forwarded in the wee hours. Veiled warnings that escalated from property disputes to something more personal, shadows of coercion that echoed the betrayals he'd witnessed in far-off deserts. Beside him, Tyler shifted his weight, the creak of leather punctuating the quiet as he scanned the street through narrowed eyes, his tattooed arm resting on the handlebars of his bike. Inside, Emily moved through the kitchen with a purposeful grace, the clatter of breakfast plates a small rebellion against the fear that had gripped her nights. Sophie sat at the table, her fork pushing eggs around her plate, the weight of the unspoken hanging between them like fog. "Mom, those guys, they're not leaving, are they?" she asked, her voice a mix of awe and unease, glancing out the window where Noah adjusted a small drone on the porch, its propellers humming softly as it lifted off for a morning patrol. Emily set a plate in front of her daughter, her hand lingering on Sophie's shoulder, the locket's chain cool against her skin. "Not until we're safe. They understand promises, Soph, the kind that don't break, no matter the storm." She thought of Daniel then, his steady voice promising a future in this very house. A vow cut short but never forgotten. These riders, with their scarred hands and unyielding stares, were weaving that promise into something tangible, a shield forged from shared losses. The neighborhood stirred awake, cars humming to life and school buses groaning down the block. But the convoy's presence drew sidelong glances, curtains twitching like nervous eyelids, whispers rippling through chain-link fences. A local patrol car slowed at the corner, its lights off, but engine purring with curiosity. The officer inside, A middle-aged man with a mustache like a broom bristle leaned out his window toward Tyler. "Everything all right here, folks? Got reports of a biker rally?" Tyler's response was even, his voice carrying the gravel of roads traveled and battles endured. "Just keeping watch, officer. Friend in need." The cop nodded slowly, eyes flicking to the iron vow patches, then drove on without pressing, the encounter leaving a ripple of tension in its wake. Marcus watched it unfold from afar, his jaw tightening. Lawmen like that one walked a fine line, some bent by the same corruption they swore to fight, others too weary to question the gray areas. By mid-morning, the group convened in Emily's backyard, the sun filtering through oak leaves to dapple the grass in shifting patterns. Marcus spread a makeshift map on a picnic table scarred by years of family barbecues, marked with pins for Lang's office, the suspicious van's last sighting, and Emily's property lines. "We've got leverage now," he said, his finger tracing a route that snaked toward the industrial zone. Noah's drone caught footage last night, Lang's crew dumping paperwork in a back alley. "Looks like falsified surveys to devalue lots like this one." Noah leaned in, replaying the grainy video on his tablet. Shadowy figures in the dim light, crates shuffled under moonlight, the scene suggesting hurried cover-ups rather than outright confrontation. Emily's stomach twisted. Those documents could rewrite her home's history, turning Daniel's legacy into a footnote for Lang's greed. Tyler's voice cut through, low and resolute. "We ride to his office today, not for a fight, for answers. Show him we're not ghosts in the machine." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the riders, their faces a gallery of quiet determination. Weathered brows furrowed, eyes reflecting the moral fire that bound them. Emily hesitated, the ethical weight pressing on her chest. Confrontation meant risks for Sophie, for these men who'd already given so much. What if it backfires? Lang has connections, people who make problems disappear. Marcus met her gaze, his own eyes holding the depth of a man who'd stared down worse odds. "That's why we do it right. No shadows, no secrets. We bring the truth to light like your husband would have. Honor demands it." As the convoy prepared to roll out, engines coughing to life in a staggered symphony, Sophie pulled Emily aside in the hallway, her backpack ready for school. "Be careful, Mom, and thank them for me." Emily hugged her tight, the scent of her daughter's shampoo, a faint vanilla, grounding her amid the chaos. "I will. Stay with Mrs. Ellis after class. We'll pick you up together." The door closed behind Sophie with a soft click, leaving Emily to join the riders on the porch. Tyler handed her a burner phone, its weight solid in her palm. "For updates. We're family now. Chosen, not born." The word resonated, stirring memories of Daniel's crew, men who'd stood by him through lean times, their loyalty a quiet force against the world's cynicism. The bikes thundered away in formation, a steel river carving through suburban streets, drawing stares from joggers and delivery vans alike. Emily watched until the dust settled, then retreated inside to pore over Daniel's old files once more, the attic's musty air thick with echoes of the past. Hours blurred into a tense vigil. Calls from Marcus came in bursts, static-laced reports of circling Lang's perimeter, spotting the developer in a heated exchange with suited men outside a nondescript warehouse. "He's sweating," Marcus said, his tone laced with grim satisfaction. "Mentioned your name, thinks he can buy us off. We held the line, showed him the footage. No threats, just facts." But beneath the calm, Emily sensed the undercurrent. Lang's allies weren't passive. A patrol car shadowed the convoy on the return leg, its presence a subtle warning from higher up the chain. Dusk fell like a heavy curtain, the sky streaked with amber and indigo as the riders filtered back, bikes cooling with soft ticks in the driveway. Marcus dismounted first, his vest dusted with the grit of backroads, carrying a folder tucked under his arm. Pilfered evidence from a careless aide's trash bin, pages detailing kickbacks and coerced sales. "This ties it all," he explained to Emily on the porch, the lantern's glow illuminating faded ink on forged deeds. Tyler and Noah flanked them, sharing a thermos of soup Emily had simmered earlier, the steam carrying hints of herbs and home. Lang's panicking. Sent a go-between this afternoon, offered double the market for the lot. But we saw through it. He's cornered, lashing out online to isolate you. The revelation hung in the air, heavy as the gathering clouds, stirring a moral storm within Emily. These men had risked exposure, their veteran networks now buzzing with inquiries that could draw unwanted eyes. Yet their loyalty shone undimmed, a beacon against the corruption that had claimed Daniel's firm and now threatened her peace. As night deepened, the watches resumed, riders rotating with the precision of old unit drills, their silhouettes merging with the trees. Sophie returned under escort, her laughter mingling with the groups as she recounted her day, the house filling with a fragile warmth. But in the quiet hours, as Emily lay awake, listening to the distant rumble of a lone bike on patrol, doubt crept in like fog off the river. Lang's web extended further. Whispers from Marcus's contacts hinted at ties to City Hall, officials turning blind eyes for slices of the pie. The ethical crossroads loomed sharper: push harder for justice, or seek a quieter resolution to protect the fragile family forming around her. The locket at her throat warmed against her skin, Daniel's promise a silent urging. Outside, Tyler's voice drifted on the wind, sharing a story of a brother-in-arms saved by a single act of defiance, the tale weaving redemption into the night. Emily rose, peering through the curtains at the vigilant circle, resolve hardening. Tomorrow would test them all, the unyielding vow against the tide of compromise. In the distance, a car's headlights lingered too long at the block's end, a harbinger of the shadows closing in, demanding choices that could redefine loyalty forever. The moon hung low over the suburban canopy like a silver medallion, its pale light filtering through the branches to etch jagged patterns on the dew-slicked pavement. Emily's home breathed with the quiet rhythm of vigilance, the Iron Vow riders' motorcycles forming a steel barricade that gleamed faintly in the night. Inside, the kitchen clock ticked past midnight, its hands a relentless march against the uncertainty that had settled like dust after a long ride. Emily sat at the table, the pilfered folder from Lang's office spread before her under the soft glow of a single lamp. Pages crinkled under her fingers, forged signatures mimicking Daniel's bold script, dates blurred to obscure the timeline of bribes that had unraveled his firm from within. The air carried the faint, comforting scent of cooling soup and leather, a blend that spoke of sanctuary amid the storm. Marcus Hale paced the living room, his boots soft on the carpet, worn thin by years of family footsteps. His phone buzzed intermittently, each vibration a thread pulling at the web they'd begun to unravel. Tyler lounged against the doorframe, arms crossed, his presence a solid anchor as he watched Sophie do her homework at the far end of the table. The girl glanced up occasionally, her pencil pausing mid-equation, eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and the wide-eyed wonder of youth thrust into adult shadows. Noah had taken the drone up again, its faint whir lost to the night as he monitored from the porch, cross-referencing footage with a laptop balanced on his knee. The group's cohesion was palpable, a silent pact forged not in words, but in the shared weight of promises kept against all odds. Emily traced a line on one document, her voice emerging soft but edged with steel. This one? It's dated just after Daniel's funeral. Lang must have waited, thinking grief would break me, but he didn't count on us holding on. Marcus stopped pacing, leaning over the table, his shadow merging with hers in the lamplight. The lines on his face deepened, memories of desert winds and broken radio silence flickering in his eyes. Men like him thrive on isolation. Cut off the light and the truth withers. But you've got us now. A crew that knows the cost of turning away. Tyler nodded, his voice a low rumble like idling engines. Seen it in the service. 1 weak link, and the whole line crumbles. We plug it with loyalty, not force. Outside, the night deepened, carrying the distant wail of a siren that twisted through the streets like a warning. Noah burst through the back door, tablet in hand, his scar catching the light as he hurried to the group. Got movement, 2 vehicles circling the block. One's that van from before, the other unmarked, plates swapped. Lang's testing the waters. The room tensed, the air thickening with the scent of adrenaline and fresh brewed tea Emily had set out earlier, its steam curling like unspoken fears. Sophie looked up, her face paling, but Emily reached across, squeezing her hand. "Stay inside, love, we've got this." The locket at her throat felt heavier now, a talisman of the vows that bound them all. Daniel's to her, hers to their home, and now this unexpected family's to justice. Marcus grabbed his helmet, the group moving with the fluid precision of men who'd synced watches under fire. "Tyler, you and Noah take the flank. I'll front the driveway. Emily, keep the lights low. No silhouettes." They fanned out into the darkness, engines stirring to life with muffled growls, the chrome frames catching moonlight like drawn blades. Emily watched from the window, heart pounding in sync with the rising hum, as the convoy repositioned subtly, bikes angling to block sightlines, riders melting into shadows without a word. The van approached slowly, its headlights dimmed, creeping past the house like a predator sizing up prey. Tyler revved once, a deliberate warning that echoed off the houses, and the vehicle hesitated, tires crunching gravel before accelerating away into the night. Noah's voice crackled over the radio Marcus had left with Emily, static-laced, but clear. They're looping back toward Lang's zone, tailing discreetly. Drones got eyes. She clutched the device, the plastic warm from her grip, as minutes stretched into an eternity of waiting. Inside, Sophie slid closer, her homework forgotten. "Mom, what if they come for us? Like in those stories you tell about Dad standing up to the bosses." Emily pulled her into a side hug, the girl's warmth chasing the chill from her bones. "Your dad taught me that real strength isn't in fighting shadows, it's in shining light on them. These men get that. They're his echo, in a way." The words carried a quiet redemption, mending fractures she'd carried since the funeral, where empty chairs had mocked their dreams. Dawn broke with a hesitant blush, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold that seeped through the curtains. The riders reconvened on the porch, faces etched with fatigue, but eyes alight with purpose. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, the morning dew clinging to his vest like unshed tears. They bailed after the second pass, spooked, I'd wager. Noah's feed shows them dumping a burner phone in a ditch. "We're closing in." Tyler handed Emily a small drive, salvaged data from the chase. "Lang's assistant, the one behind the online noise. Address in here. We pay a visit tomorrow, civil-like, with what we've got." The evidence weighed in her palm, a tangible step toward the moral justice Daniel had chased, now amplified by this brotherhood of the road. As the sun climbed higher, neighbors emerged for their routines, casting curious glances at the steadfast guardians. A delivery truck paused, the driver nodding respectfully before moving on. The unusual alliance weaving into the fabric of the street. Emily stepped outside, the grass cool underfoot, breathing in the crisp air laced with pine and exhaust. Sophie joined her, waving shyly to Noah, who grinned back, a bridge building between worlds. Marcus lingered nearby, his gaze sweeping the horizon. This vigil's more than protection. It's a stand for every promise buried under greed. "Your husband's fight? It's ours now." The words resonated, stirring a deep emotional current, the pain of loss transmuting into a shared resolve that felt like family reborn. Yet beneath the fragile calm, psychological tension coiled tighter. Emily sensed the ethical bind. Exposing Lang could ripple outward, drawing scrutiny to the riders' own shadowed pasts, veterans skirting the edges of a system that had failed them. A call came through Marcus's phone, his contact's voice urgent over the line. City halls buzzing, Langs pulling strings, quiet inquiries about unlicensed gatherings. Marcus's fist tightened around the device, the moral crossroads sharpening. Push forward, risk the fragile peace, or negotiate from strength. Emily met his eyes, her voice steady. We honor the truth, no compromises. The group murmured assent, the air humming with unspoken loyalty as the day unfolded under watchful skies. By afternoon, the house thrummed with quiet activity, riders rotating shifts, sharing meals that filled the space with laughter and stories of roads redeemed. Tyler recounted a tale from his early days with the vow, a midnight rescue that mirrored Emily's own act of kindness, the narrative weaving redemption into the air like smoke from a campfire. Sophie listened rapt, the fear in her eyes giving way to a spark of inspiration. But as shadows lengthened, a new message pinged on Emily's laptop, subtler from an anonymous source. Back off, or the girl pays. The threat hung, a psychological jab that tested their unity, demanding not just vigilance, but the unyielding courage to face corruption's heart. If you're finding this story gripping, hit that like button. It helps us reach more ears in need of these tales of quiet courage. The afternoon sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a golden haze over Emily's neighborhood that softened the edges of the tension coiling in the air. The Iron Vow riders had expanded their perimeter subtly, motorcycles repositioned like chess pieces on a board of quiet defiance, their chrome catching the light in fleeting sparks. Inside the house, the kitchen table had become command central, a scatter of maps, laptops humming with encrypted feeds, and mugs of cooling coffee that carried the bitter edge of resolve. Emily stood by the window, her fingers tracing the locket's engraving, the metal warm from her touch as she watched Sophie kick a soccer ball in the backyard under Noah's watchful eye. The girl's laughter rang out, a fragile melody against the low growl of idling engines, but Emily's mind replayed the latest message. Back off, or the girl pays. It wasn't just words, it was a fracture in the moral armor they'd built, testing the bonds of this chosen family. Marcus Hale entered from the porch, his boots leaving faint imprints on the threshold, carrying the scent of sun-warmed leather and distant asphalt. His face, etched with the quiet scars of decisions made under fire, held a steely calm as he set down a worn notebook filled with scribbled notes from his latest call. Lang's assistant, name's Harlan, lives in a rundown apartment off the old Mill Road. Sloppy guy, left digital footprints, a mile wide. We go tonight, knock polite, show him the evidence. No drama, just the weight of truth. Tyler leaned against the counter, his massive frame a pillar of unyielding support, the dog tag's tattoo flexing as he cracked his knuckles. And if he squirms, we've got the photos, the emails. Make him see the light, or the bars. Noah nodded from the doorway, pocketing his drone remote, his sharp eyes reflecting the ethical tightrope they walked. Justice without descending into the shadows they fought. Emily turned from the window, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest, the air thick with the aroma of simmering stew she'd thrown together, a small anchor of normalcy. What about Sophie? This message? It's not bluffing. Lang's cornered, and cornered men lash out. The room fell quiet, the tick of the clock amplifying the psychological strain, each rider grappling with their own ghosts. Marcus had lost a sister to a system that looked away. Tyler, a squad to orders bent by greed. For them, this wasn't vengeance. It was redemption, honoring promises whispered in hospital wards and roadside breakdowns. We double the watch here, Marcus said, his tone like gravel under tires. You and Sophie stay put. We're the shield, Emily. Your act on that rainy night, it pulled us from our own drift. Now we return it, full circle. As twilight bled into the sky, painting the clouds in strokes of crimson and indigo, the convoy assembled with hushed efficiency. Engines murmured to life, a symphony of restrained power that vibrated through the ground, carrying the faint whiff of gasoline and oiled chains. Tyler clapped Noah on the shoulder, a silent vow passing between them before mounting up. Marcus lingered on the porch steps, his helmet tucked under his arm, meeting Emily's gaze. The fading light caught the silver in his hair, a reminder of battles weathered. This ends the harassment. Lang's web unravels from the edges in. Trust the code. We ride for the overlooked, the ones who keep their word when the world's gone silent. She nodded, the locket pressing against her heart like Daniel's unspoken approval, a surge of emotional fire chasing the fear. Sophie ran up then, breathless from her game, hugging Marcus unexpectedly. "Bring them back safe," she whispered, her small hand on his vest. He ruffled her hair gently, the gesture weaving her deeper into their fold, a daughter claimed by loyalty's quiet grace. The bikes rolled out in a staggered line, tail lights winking like fireflies into the gathering dusk, leaving the house enveloped in a hush, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Emily locked the doors, the click echoing her fortified will, and joined Sophie in the living room, where a muted TV flickered with old westerns, tales of outlaws turned guardians that mirrored their reality. Outside, 2 riders remained. A veteran named Lucas, broad-shouldered and soft-spoken, patrolling the backyard with a flashlight beam slicing the shadows, and a wiry scout called Ryan, perched on the roof with binoculars, his radio crackling softly. The night deepened, stars pricking the velvet dome overhead, the air cooling to carry hints of wood smoke from distant chimneys. Emily's mind wandered to Daniel's last project, a community centre he'd fought to build clean, only for Lang's influence to bury it under red tape and whispers. Now, with these men bridging past and present, she felt the redemption blooming, not in grand gestures, but in the steadfast watch that turned isolation into alliance. Hours slipped by in taut anticipation, the house's windows glowing like beacons against the dark. A distant rumble signaled the convoy's return around midnight, engines cutting off one by one in a wave of silence. Marcus dismounted first, his stride purposeful as he approached the door, folder in hand now thicker with fresh printouts. Tyler and Noah followed, faces flushed from the ride, carrying the chill of night air laced with urban grit. They gathered in the kitchen, voices low as Sophie dozed on the couch, a blanket draped over her like a protective shroud. Harlan cracked like cheap tin, Marcus explained, spreading photos on the table, screenshots of deleted emails, timestamps linking the threats directly to Lang's directives. Admitted the online campaign was to scare you into selling low, said Lang's got city officials in his pocket, falsified appraisals, the works, but he flipped, gave us names, recordings. It's enough to bury them ethically, no courts needed if we play it right. Tyler's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a wrong righted without fists. Guy was sweating bullets when we showed the drone footage, begged to cut a deal, once out of the mess. We left him with a choice: come clean or watch his world shrink. Noah added, his tablet illuminating his scar in blue light. Trace the money trail too, kickbacks from that mall project funneled through shells. Your husband's rejection, it cost Lang big, delayed permits, lost investors. This is personal payback, twisted into threats. Emily absorbed it all, the weight lifting slightly, replaced by a moral clarity that burned bright. These revelations weren't just evidence, they were vindication for Daniel's stand, a legacy revived through the Iron Vow's unyielding honor. Yet the psychological undercurrent lingered. Lang wouldn't fade quietly. The message about Sophie proved his desperation, a shadow that demanded they strike at the core. As the group planned the next move over steaming mugs of tea, the scent grounding their resolve, Lucas radioed from outside. Quiet perimeter, but headlights flickered 2 blocks over, keeping eyes peeled. The vigilance renewed, a reminder of the ethical suspense building toward dawn. Emily glanced at Sophie, sleeping peacefully, and felt the family's chosen threads tighten, bikers who'd traded war's isolation for this road of quiet justice. Marcus placed a hand on the table, his voice a vow etched in the night. Tomorrow, we confront Lang head-on. Bring the proof, demand he back off. For good. No more games. This promise we made? It honors every loss. Every stand, like your husband's. The words hung, heavy with redemption's promise as the clock edged toward morning. Outside, the motorcycles stood sentinel, their forms merging with the oaks, a steel testament to loyalty that outlasted the encroaching dark. But in the distance, the faint hum of an approaching engine whispered of the storm's final turn, where truths would clash and bonds be tested in the fire of uncompromised honor. The first rays of dawn sliced through the eastern oaks like golden blades, illuminating the Iron Vow riders' motorcycles in a halo of resolve. Emily's home stood as a bastion amid the waking suburb, the air crisp with the scent of morning mist and faint engine oil, a reminder of the night's unyielding watch. She moved through the kitchen with quiet determination, brewing coffee that filled the space with its robust aroma, the steam curling like tendrils of hope. Sophie stirred upstairs, her footsteps light on the creaking stairs, while outside, Marcus Hale checked his bike's chain with methodical pulls, the metallic clink echoing his steady heartbeat. Tyler and Noah flanked him, loading the pilfered evidence into a saddlebag, folders thick with damning printouts, a USB drive humming with digital ghosts of Lang's schemes. The group had barely spoken through the pre-dawn hours, their silence a bond forged in shared purpose, the psychological weight of the impending confrontation hanging like dew on the grass. Emily joined them on the porch, the wooden steps cool under her bare feet, the locket at her throat a steady pulse against her skin. "This could change everything," she said softly, her voice carrying the tremor of a woman who'd buried fear under layers of quiet strength. Marcus straightened, his weathered face catching the light, eyes reflecting the moral fire that had drawn him from solitary roads to this vigil. "It will. Not with shouts or shadows, but with the truth your husband lived by. Lang's built his empire on broken words. We tear it down with ones that hold." Tyler nodded, his broad frame shifting with restrained energy. The dog tags tattoo a silent oath to fallen brothers. Noah pocketed his tablet, the drone already stowed for aerial backup, his scar a faint line in the growing light. Sophie appeared at the door, backpack in hand for school, her eyes wide but trusting. "You're all coming back, right?" The question pierced the air, and Marcus knelt to her level, his voice gravelly yet gentle. "Like we promised, kid. Family rides together." The convoy assembled with the precision of old unit maneuvers, engines rumbling to life in a staggered chorus that vibrated through the neighborhood. Curtains twitched as families rose, the unusual sight now a fixture of whispered legends, bikers as guardians, not threats. Emily watched them go, the taillights fading into the morning haze, a knot of anxiety twisting in her chest. She turned to Sophie, pulling her into a hug, scented with vanilla shampoo and resolve. "Mrs. Ellis will watch you today. Stay sharp, love. We're ending this." The house felt emptier without the riders' presence, but fortified by their vow, Emily retreated to the kitchen, poring over Daniel's old letters for the 100th time. His words leaped from the page. "Integrity isn't loud, Em. It's the stand you take when no one's watching." Tears blurred the ink, but they fueled her, a redemption blooming from grief's ashes. Miles away, the industrial zone loomed under a sky streaked with high clouds, the air heavy with the tang of rust and diesel from idling trucks. Victor Lang's office squatted behind a chain-link fence, its facade of glass and steel reflecting the sun like a smug mirror. The Iron Vow riders arrived in formation, engines cutting off in unison to leave a thunderous silence that pressed against the building. Marcus led the way through the gate, unchallenged, the security guard paling at the sight of their vests and unyielding stares. Tyler carried the evidence bag, Noah flanked with his phone recording discreetly, a digital witness to the moral reckoning. Inside, the lobby hummed with fluorescent buzz, receptionists glancing up nervously as the group approached Lang's door. No raised voices, no drawn lines, just the weight of their approach, boots echoing like judgment on the tiled floor. Lang looked up from his desk, a man in his 50s, with slicked hair and a tie too tight for his flushed neck, the room smelling of stale coffee and desperation. His eyes darted to the Iron Vow patches, recognition flickering with unease. "What is this? Some kind of shakedown?" Marcus set the folder down with deliberate calm, the thud resonant in the tension-thick air. "No games, Lang. We're here for the truth, yours and the one you've buried." He slid out the documents, emails chaining threats to his assistant, falsified appraisals devaluing Emily's home, kickbacks traced to City Hall pockets. Lang's face drained of color, sweat beading on his brow as Noah played a snippet of Harlan's recorded confession, the voice tinny but damning. "You targeted a widow for standing her ground, her husband's ground. That's not business, that's cowardice." Tyler's voice rumbled low, arms crossed like barriers. "We've got eyes on your whole operation. Drones, contacts, the works. Back off Emily Harper, withdraw the pressure or this goes public. Not to the press for spectacle, but to every neighbor, every official who thought they could look away." Lang leaned back, chair creaking under him, the psychological siege cracking his facade. Memories of Daniel's resistance flashed in his mind, the honest bids that cost him deals, the moral thorn that now pricked deeper through these road-worn men. He stammered denials at first, but the evidence mounted like an unbreakable chain, each page a link to his unraveling empire. The room grew stifling, the distant hum of traffic a mocking reminder of the world beyond his control. Outside, the sun climbed higher, baking the asphalt as the confrontation stretched. Lang's hands trembled over the papers, the ethical dilemma etching lines on his face, clinging to greed or yielding to the light of exposure. Marcus leaned in, voice steady as a vow renewed. "You can end this now. Call off your dogs, make it right, or lose it all to the promises you broke." The words hung, heavy with the redemption these riders embodied, their own scars, desert losses, forsaken oaths, fueling a justice poetic in its restraint. Lang finally nodded, voice hoarse, dialing his assistant with instructions to delete the campaigns, withdraw the sales pressure, and route fair compensation through clean channels. No violence, no spectacle, just the power of truth laid bare under the midday glare. By early afternoon, the convoy thundered back, dust trailing like a victory banner. Emily waited on the porch, Sophie home early and safe beside her, the air now light with birdsong and relief. Marcus dismounted first, handing her a signed affidavit, Lang's capitulation in black and white, the threat silenced, the property secured. "It's over," he said simply, the weight lifting from his shoulders like fog burned away. Tyler grinned faintly, clapping Noah on the back, while the group shared nods of quiet triumph. Sophie hugged them fiercely, her laughter breaking the emotional dam, weaving the chosen family tighter. Emily's eyes met Marcus's, gratitude mingling with a deeper bond, the redemption of Daniel's legacy, honored through loyalty's unyielding road. As the sun dipped toward evening, casting long shadows that danced like freed spirits, the riders prepared to disperse, engines idling with reluctant growls. The neighborhood exhaled, whispers turning to waves of respect. The corruption's web severed by acts of silent courage. Emily stood with them, the locket warm against her heart, feeling the promise fulfilled. Not in isolation, but in the family forged from rain-slicked kindness and steadfast watch. Marcus mounted up last, helmet in hand. You call if shadows stir again. Iron vow rides eternal. The convoy rolled out, a fading rumble that echoed into the horizon, leaving Emily and Sophie in a home reclaimed, the moral light enduring brighter than any threat. In the days that followed, peace settled like a gentle rain, Lang's influence retreating under scrutiny from his own ranks, the online venom evaporating into silence. Emily found strength in the quiet, volunteering at the diner with renewed fire. Sophie dreaming bigger under skies unclouded by fear. The Iron Vow became legend in their town, a brotherhood of honor proving that promises, once given, outride the darkest storms. And in the heart of it all, redemption whispered, "Loyalty chooses us, and in choosing heals. Thank you for riding this journey with us." If these stories of quiet courage touch your heart, hit that subscribe button and join our crew. We've got more tales of unbreakable vows coming your way.